Hi, my name is Gerhard Schwantner and welcome to Selling Power's Daily Report. Today we have the pleasure of meeting with Brian Dietmeyer. He's the founder and CEO of Think Inc. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, Gerhard.
Brian, your company is the leader in negotiation training. Can you explain the blueprint for an effective business negotiation?
Sure. The notion behind the blueprint is that you can anticipate virtually 80% of what's going to happen in a negotiation. And that stands in fairly stark contrast to the training that most of us have been through in our lives, which is, you need to be prepared. There's this notion that you never know what's going to happen in a negotiation. So when the problem is defined that way, the solution, most negotiation training then, tries to prepare you for every tactical, the 9 most effective responses, the 7 planning techniques, the 9 truths, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, the blueprint, we know we've watched about 10,000 deals in almost 50 countries over 10 years. And really answering 2 questions before you get to the face-to-face part of a negotiation. What happens to both sides in the event you don't agree? And what are the likely terms in the event you do agree? Those 2 data points will help you effectively blueprint the negotiation and have a sense. The better job you do of blueprinting, the less likely you're going to be surprised by anything that comes at you.
Can you walk us through the graph that you have developed for your clients? Can you explain that?
Yeah, on the outside edges of the graph is what we call the consequence of no agreement to both sides. And so to effectively blueprint a deal, the question 1 is what happens to both sides in the event you don't agree? The reason why this is so important is this is really what you're negotiating against. If you're talking to a customer that says, I can get the same thing from someone else cheaper, they're talking about what they get if they don't reach agreement with you. In many negotiations that we've watched over the last 10 years, one or more often both sides don't have clarity on what that is, what that alternative looks like. So in effect they're negotiating, and there are tactics flying all over the place that no one can get their arms around because they're not working with a full set of facts. So the very first and most important step in any negotiation is to get clarity on, especially for the customer, what is the customer's alternative to you if they don't reach agreement? And then separate of that, the second part of negotiating is then saying, okay, what are all the terms? Of course price is going to come up, but again, watching a lot of deals all around the world, we find that professionals on the buy and sell side don't have all the data on the table simultaneously. They're defining a very complex business-to-business deal mostly in terms of price, when in fact there's usually many products and services that are on the table, all sorts of terms and conditions, and a lot of sort of creative trades outside there.
So there are 2 parts to it, seller-defined terms and the buyer-defined terms.
Yes, absolutely.
And how do you propose to lay this out? Is there a process for that?
Well, there is, and the best way to do it is to there's this idea that we sell and then we negotiate, and what we like to do is eliminate the entire idea of selling and negotiating and really integrate the 2 into what we prefer to call business deal making, that you do the 2 simultaneously. So any good sales opportunity management methodology or account management has you collecting data early on. And what we like to do is say early on in the sales process, before your competitors and your customers are even thinking about negotiation, you start collecting data about the consequence of no agreement to both sides and the trades for both sides.
What does CNA stand for? Buyer CNA and seller CNA?
Consequence of no agreement. That is, the customer says something like, I can get the same thing cheaper from your competitor, or you're pretty good, but you're not really worth the price premium you're bringing up, or you're much tougher on your terms and conditions than the rest of the market. Anytime someone is referring to their alternative to reaching agreement with you, it's important to have really more data than the other side has on their alternative, and we find that's not the case at all.
Thank you, Brian. We're going to continue our conversation with Brian Dietmeyer, the founder and CEO of Think Inc. And tomorrow we'll talk about the consequences that happen if there's no agreement.